Hi, I'm Jim Julius. Thanks for taking a few minutes with me today. This may be a little bit longer than some of the other videos that you've had as introductory videos in PotCert, but it's a big topic and I hope to do it justice. I will say that if you scrub a bit through the Rick Schweier video, you should be able to gain back all the time that I ask of you in this presentation. But I hope to do something that will give you a lot of ideas that you can follow up on. So I'm going to very quickly skim through some very big ideas and leave you with some references that you can follow up on if anything especially captures your attention in these next few minutes. I'm going to start with a quote about educational technology, and I'm going to read these quotes. I just have a couple so that they can become part of the captioning. Educational technology is a useful means of meeting individual differences and individualizing instruction. It is a means of delivering instruction almost anywhere it may be desired, and of doing the essential exposition and information job of teaching so that more time of the teacher may be freed for creative teaching. When do you think that was said? Well, the answer is 1968. So this idea of using technology to help teachers be more creative and less information driven has been around for a long time, and really it even precedes 1968. So just to step back a bit about philosophies of technology, these are underlying dispositions that usually aren't consciously selected, but they are very important to understand and think about as we encounter the ways others use and promote technology and the way we think about it ourselves. So determinism is something that I think that previous quote represented very well. If this technology, then you get that result. And determinism can be utopian and it can also be dystopian. So depending on where you're coming from, you may think that technology is going to turn out to be great for you, for your class, for society, or not so great. Instrumentalism, on the other hand, says technology is just a tool, it's all about how it's used. And a third way that isn't necessarily as well represented when you hear people talking about philosophies of technology, but I think is the best one, is critical theory. So in critical theory, the notion that every technology has dual impulses toward liberation and domination, and that we need to consider the built-in biases of technology. So that the creators and promoters of technology have something that they may consciously or unconsciously be trying to push users toward. We can subvert that if we're aware of it and thinking about other ways of doing things, but we need to be aware of what those biases are. So in your materials for this week, Schweier in his video mentioned at one point when he was talking about different histories of technology and types of educational technology that how you use it is an important part of the educational technology. And Lanier in his New York Times article said, how do we use technology to shed light without killing the magic? So there's definitely an agreement that technology alone is not going to help us get where we want to go as teachers, and we need to think about how it's used. That's where instructional design comes in, and in that sense, instructional design is kind of a subset of educational technology, but really, for me, the design overrides technology because it's bigger than just technology at the same time. So one more quote. This is from an article in a higher education journal. Engaging students in learning is principally the responsibility of the teacher, who becomes less an imparter of knowledge and more a designer and facilitator of learning experiences and opportunities. In other words, the real challenge in college teaching is not covering the material for the students, it's uncovering the material with the students. So again, this speaks to the larger issue of what instructional design is all about. It's not just about how the technology is used, but how about the entire design of learning experiences, opportunities, and environments. So understanding by design is one of the models of instructional design that I'm going to very briefly present to you today, and the understanding by design authors talk about twin sins of traditional design, which might be no design at all, just kind of the way things end up without a lot of good design thinking. So one of those is coverage. So that was mentioned in that previous quote, the idea that the way a course is laid out or learning experience is laid out is all driven by the material, the content that is assumed is necessary to be covered. So the way the textbook chapters are organized is the way the course gets organized. As people have tried to go against that model and tried to think more about learner-centeredness and student engagement, sometimes, and this is a little bit more of an issue I think in K-12, but the idea is hands-on without being minds-on, that we just have engagement for the sake of engagement without necessarily thinking about how students are going to connect their experience with the larger goals of gaining new understanding and knowledge that lasts for a long time, which is of course our underwriting goal in education. So in both cases, the authors of Understanding by Design say there's not a guiding intellectual purpose or clear priorities that frame the learning experience for the students. And so as a corrective, or as a hope for me in seeing what faculty do in order to not do those things, we look at different ways of approaching instructional design. And this, again, can be at many different levels. You can think about it at a course level, you can think about it at an activity level, you can think about it as a guide for designing learning environments. But there are 6 different lenses or approaches to instructional design that I want to very briefly introduce you to. And again, I will provide references at the end so that you can follow up on as many of these as interest you. So the first I've already mentioned is Understanding by Design. This is also called backwards design. Very, very simple concept, but the idea is to begin with the end in mind. What are the desired results? What do you want your students to be able to know and do at the end of the learning experience? What is the evidence that you'll accept as evidence that the students are at that point? And then from there, how do you design the learning experiences and instruction so that students will get to that point? Something that's a little bit deeper is to use Bloom's taxonomy, again, to think about what it is that you want students to be able to know and do. This is a framework that most of you are familiar with. You've seen it at different points in your career. But what this model points to is the idea of alignment. So when you are assessing students for a particular type of knowledge at a certain level in the taxonomy, have the activities and the content that have been part of the students' experiences to that point reasonably been aligned with the assessment that you're asking them to do. So this is a tool that I think is very useful in reflecting on current courses when you begin a redesign process and think, am I assessing students at the level that I really want them to be at? Or am I asking them to recall things when really I'm espousing more of a creative, analytical kind of thing at the higher end? And then how do I support students in getting there? Universal design for learning is another approach that emphasizes the diversity of learners and trying to maximize success for as many learners as possible. And so there's a lot to understand universal design for learning, but the 3 key principles in UDL are about providing multiplicity of ways for students to acquire skills and knowledge and demonstrate that. So providing multiple means of representation, multiple means of action and expression, multiple means of engagement, not just one path for everybody to get to the end, but providing multiple paths by which people might get to that end is what UDL is all about. How people learn is a work that was done in the early 2000s, late 1990s, but is really seminal in gathering together research about how people learn. And chapter 6 of that book was all about the design of learning environments based on research. And they came up with 4 different lenses, which all should be used to think about the design of effective learning environments. And so one of those lenses is learner-centeredness, thinking about what our students actually already think and know, how they operate as we design the learning environment. The second is knowledge-centeredness. So this, again, really gets to that idea of where do we want students to go, how are we going to assess their mastery and support them in that mastery approach. The third is assessment-centeredness. So not just at the end and assessing did they get there, but along the way. Are we assessing constantly, giving students opportunities to make their thinking visible and providing them feedback? And then the fourth lens is community-centeredness. So this speaks to the importance in the research of social learning and how we get students to engage as a community, as a culture of questioning, respect, risk-taking. That community idea is really important in the community of inquiry model. This comes out of Canada in the early 2000s and out of much more online and blended learning. So the community of inquiry speaks to interactions between students and students, students and instructors, students and content, and in those interactions, the community of inquiry uses the term presences. So there's this teaching presence, social presence, cognitive presence, and by attending to these in the design of learning experiences, learning environments, again, the idea is that you're really having an impact on student learning. There's a lot of research using the community of inquiry model in higher education as an important way of designing learning environments that are successful. And finally, there are a number of instruments that are designed to help faculty in higher education create online learning experiences and courses for students that are probably going to be as successful as they can be. One that's the California State University system is working on right now is called COLT, Quality Online Learning and Teaching. This is an evolution of the Chico rubric, which hopefully most of you have heard of at some point. It's been around for over 10 years. Quality Matters is another one that's very widely used. What these tools do is not necessarily prescribe how to design a course, but give some baseline understandings of what good course design includes as key elements. So you can see on this there are 7 different overarching categories, and within each of these in the COLT rubric there are multiple indicators. You can use it in the design process as a checklist. You can use it as a review tool after the fact. You can use it for peer review. You can use it in selecting outstanding courses that you want to share with others. But I would encourage you, if this interests you in particular, to look at some of the research and various examples of online learning instructional design rubrics. And so again, there are a number of references that you can follow up on. Hope this is helpful, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what you all come up with this week, what interests you in your thinking about it, educational technology and instructional design.